So this is January 6th week. Have you noticed the fake news? They've been banging the drum already about this anniversary. The worst thing that has happened since, I don't know, World War XVIII, whatever. Seriously, I think the fake news, they're going to give themselves a heart attack. I'm worried about them with the hype, the exaggeration, and the lies.
This Sunday, January 6th, 1 year later, it was a violent effort to overturn a free and fair election.
The deadly siege on Congress as an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol.
So
to reverse the result.
everything you're going to hear about January 6th, just about everything you'll hear from the mainstream media over the next week are lies. How will you know they're lying? When they're talking, when they're showing you pictures. They are distorting everything, exaggerating everything, and omitting something extremely, extremely important. And that is what happened to Ashli Babbitt. Ashli Babbitt, U.S. military veteran, unarmed, shot completely without justification. I feel so bad for the Babbitt family. You know why? No one's talking about her. Our mainstream media don't care because Ashli Babbitt is a couple of things they abhor right now, or that at least carry no status in American society. She's working class, she's white, she's a woman, and she's pro-Trump. They hate her for that. They hate her posthumously for that. And we'll be talking about her in a different light throughout the week. I hope you stay with us because it's an important conversation to have. All right. Meanwhile, I saw Kamala also while I was gone. Man, I know they're liars, but when they do it this obviously and with such flair, I'm taken aback still. All right, here it is.
And this is not about saying you should vote for me or you should vote for Democrats. This is about everyone having unfettered access to their right to vote.
Unfettered access to their right to vote. That sounds great until you think about it for a moment. Everybody vote. We'll mail you the ballot. You mail it back. No problem. No questions asked. No verification. Unfettered. You ask for voter ID. That's fettered. You can't do that. That could complicate things. Of course, poor black people don't have ID. It's all phony. A lot of it's racist. And here's the real dishonest part. This fake conversation she said she had with Angela Merkel, former Chancellor of Germany. You know, they have things pretty organized in Germany. Do you think the conversation with Angela and Kamala went the way she said it did? Listen to this.
One of my favorite interactions was with the now past Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel. She came over for breakfast. She asked me about voting, and she knew what was going on here. And this is not a subject that was unique to my conversation with her, by the way, in terms of world leaders. Because people around the world watch what we do as America because we have held ourselves out to be a model of the efficacy of the ability of a democracy to coexist with an economic strength and power. We have been a role model saying you can see this and aspire to this and reject autocracies and autocratic leadership. And right now we're about to take ourselves off the map as a role model if we let people destroy one of the most important pillars of a democracy, which is free and fair election.
She seems to think if she says it with this kind of emotion that somebody will finally believe her that voting ID is a threat to free and fair elections. She said she had this conversation with Angela Merkel from Germany. I've been to Germany. Have you been to Germany? It's a very organized place. And when she said this, I started thinking, wait a second. They probably have voter ID in Germany. And I looked it up. And boy, do they have voter ID.
3 or 4 weeks before the elections, she receives a letter, a so-called Wahlbenachrichtigung, inviting her to vote at a school nearby. The date and time, as well as the address of where she can vote, are indicated here. With this Wahlbenachrichtigung, she also has the option to apply to vote via regular mail. When Cyan arrives at the school, she shows her Wahlbenachrichtigung. An election worker checks her ID and indicates which booth she may vote in.
That's PBS Germany, the English station. And yes, voter ID, notification. They notify you. You have to apply for absentee. Here are some of the requirements. In Germany, like most of the free world, voters receive electoral notification in the mail at polling station, must provide name, ID, and that electoral notification thingamajig. Did you catch the name of it? That. That's a big word, but you got to have it with you when you show up to vote in Germany. It makes sense. It also makes total sense what we know about Kamala and Biden, that she's lying about that conversation. By the way, voter ID, or ID in general, up until Donald Trump showed up and won, and they try to figure out ways to mess with the next election, my opinion, there is some of that. We know that. Having identification wasn't considered racist. It wasn't considered anti-Democrat. This is liberal former mayor, finally, Bill de Blasio, talking about identification and the need for it 8 years ago. This is in 2014.
It is crucial for all New Yorkers to carry ID, particularly our young people. That is related to today's announcement, but I think it's an overall point that we really have to get across. Carrying ID is absolutely crucial at all times for a lot of reasons.
How do we get from there to requiring ID is racist? Something very sinister is afoot. Anyway, I'm happy he's gone, but I'm not happy about his replacement, a guy by the name of Eric Adams. So he's not very impressive. He doesn't have much in the way of skill, very weak resume. He was a police officer, and that's his big selling point, that he's going to be the crime buster, all right, all during the campaign. Kind of called himself a hero at times.
For 22 years, I wore a bulletproof vest and stood on the street corners and protected children and families in the city of New York.
It was that combination of credibility when it comes to actually fighting crime, meaning he strapped on a bulletproof vest and a gun and went out in the streets every night, along with real reform credentials.
People always introduce me as a former police captain. I became a police officer. I understand crime, and I also understand police abuse. And I know how we can turn around not only New York, but America.
Dealing with public safety. The fact that Eric Adams was a cop for 22 years really works very heavily in his favor.
Wow, all that experience. He's going to fight crime like we've never seen. So on his first day of work as mayor, he's on his way to City Hall with about 50 reporters following him. And a half block away, two guys are beating up somebody. They're beating him up. What does he do? Watch.
Yes, I'm at Broadway in Kosciuszko, and I have an assault in progress, 3 males. Yes. I'm sorry? No, assault in progress, not past assault. They are fighting each other on the street right now, 3 males. Not of my knowledge.
Pretty mellow. He just calls 911. I called 911. Most New Yorkers have called 911 about a half dozen times in the previous year. We just spent, what, $20 million running an election to pick a mayor? And this is what the crime fighter does. He calls 911. Now, you may think, well, he's the mayor. Doesn't he have all kinds of cops around him protecting him? You would think that. You'd be wrong, because his first decision as mayor was to not have the cops with him.
The city's safe. We should have, just a limited amount of a lot of police personnel.
And he went on, he explained, look, I'm not going to walk around with a police detail. That's not going to be my style. And when those guys were getting beat up, he needed cops. The cops could have responded. The cops have radios. They don't have to bother with calling 911. They can call directly to a police car around the block and they can respond. Anyway, so far, not very good, but the fake news, of course, they just like him because, I don't know, they think he's cute or something.
How are you going to make a balance where you deal with the questions of crime, the questions of right, the questions of education, but not try to please either side, but really do what is right for most New Yorkers?
And that's a great question because throughout the campaign, I talked about don't put me in a box. Don't tell me I'm conservative. Don't tell me I'm progressive. I'm Eric. And being Eric means the complete wholeness of my life, understanding what it was to be arrested as a child, beat by police officers, served public protection, taking care of people who are the victims of crimes, but also the economic concerns that we had, living poor, on the verge of homelessness. All of these things brought me to this moment. And, as a reverend, Esther 4 and 14, God made me for such a time like this.
Right.
All right, so the question was, what are you going to do about education and crime? And he said, I was beat by the police, I was poor, I was on the verge of homelessness. That's all of his brand, his appeal, the kind of things you say when you're campaigning, but not when you're governing. I do believe, though, that he would not be mayor if God didn't allow it. But he allows things for all kinds of reasons. We'll see how this plays out. I have a hunch that, well, I know that people shouldn't be judged like this, the way he's making appointments, the way he puts people in certain jobs. Is he looking at their ability? Nope. Just ask him. He's looking at something entirely different.
Look at my cabinet. First Latino correction commissioner, first African-American Dominican police commissioner, first South Asian to be a deputy mayor in the city of New York, 5 women deputy mayors. When you look at what I'm assembling, smart, emotionally intelligent, committed, compassionate people.
He's got women, black women, this, that, Hispanic, nothing about competence. And by the way, emotionally intelligent. People who look like all kinds of people are emotionally intelligent. I personally know people who are white who have been declined positions in his administration. It's really sad. And by the way, he's walking around like he's the emperor of New York City. He's not. He's not. There are 8 million people, approximately, in New York City. Big, big, big city. How many of those 8 million actually voted for him? Given our screwy primary system, 3.16% of those 8 million New Yorkers made him mayor. That's all it took. That's all it took. All right, much more to come, but before we go, this is the new year, and I thought I would share with you something that I am endeavoring to do. As you may know, watching this show, I have been reading the Bible over the past few years like never before, but not necessarily every day. And I'm committed to reading it every single day. And if you're a skeptic, I have to tell you, there are passages in this book that can transform every part of your life. There's actually a part in here about the cure for anxiety. For this reason, I say to you, do not be worried about your life as to what you will eat or what you will drink, nor for your body as to what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air, that they do not sow, nor reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not worth much more than they? This is in Matthew. And forgive me, I know I'm just scratching the surface, and most of you probably have learned these lessons a long time ago, but I know there are some of you out there who have not taken a real hard look at this, as I did not for many, many years.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.